It was just on the shop floor. You know, he started asking me questions. I did say, oh, I've met you many times before when I was like a little bit younger. And he was just telling me what a good job I was doing, very supportive. And then shortly after that, it would lead to the reports of how well the boutique was doing. And that's kind of when the grooming stages started quite early. He used to tell me how much of a bad father my dad was, because he used to come into the store drunk, and he used to tell me that he was an embarrassment, that I should look to him as a father figure, that he could rely on me. And yeah, I felt a false sense of security with him early doors, because I used to go into the store with my mum and dad, and he used to come over, be very charming, you know, bring us gifts, very personable. So I literally felt quite safe in his presence early doors.
When you worked there, he was aware of who your mum and dad were?
Absolutely, yes.
When did things take a turn? When was the first inkling you got that something wasn't right?
I worked my way up to become a fashion buyer, and I had to go and report to him. So I just would generally have chit chats with him. And you know, very, very shortly after this is when this would happen. He would also put money in my bag where I used to go up there, and he used to tell me that I was very, you know, because I didn't want to take it, obviously, you'd just put it on the spot, and I was like, no, it's fine, like, you know, and he would tell me that I was very disrespectful and rude if I wouldn't take it. So in the end, you just think, okay, fine, like, I'll just take it.
Anything to get out of there?
Yeah, absolutely. And shortly after the money, then it would be, you know, I'll buy the kiss on the cheek would then lead to on the mouth, and he would try and put his tongue in my mouth, and it, you know, a couple of times that actually happened, which just makes me feel absolutely disgusting now. And then it would be touching and groping, etc. And I would feel like he would manoeuvre his way to the door, so I'd feel a bit trapped and I couldn't actually get out. And it just put me in such an awful situation at such a young age. And when I look back at it now, I just feel very sorry for my 16-year-old self. That was 22 years ago now, and it's something that I've really tried to put, you know, like just forget about, because that's how I deal with things. I put it in a box and put it to the side, and you know, so obviously talking about it today is obviously bringing up quite a lot of the emotions that I felt at the time and the shame. And then as I was a fashion buyer, I was travelling the world to go and buy clothes for the store. I told him that I was going to Milan to go and buy clothes. He was like, oh, go and stay at the apartment. I was like, oh, that's great, because obviously I've got to get up early and get a flight. And then
this was the apartment on Park Lane, which has been mentioned by so many women who have similar stories to yours. But you just thought, this is an apartment owned by Harrods, so people use it for work purposes.
Absolutely. So I was obviously getting an early flight. He turned up at the apartment, to my shock. I just couldn't believe it. I was just gobsmacked. I was kind of very shell-shocked that I just didn't really know what to do, apart from, you know, he came in and then he sat me down on the sofa and like was obviously very forceful with, you know, the touching and the kissing, and he got his private out and got my hand and was trying to maneuver it on, you know, his parts, and when that didn't work, he was trying to force my head onto his lap, and I don't know how, but I managed to wiggle away. And I think possibly, you know that him knowing my parents, where I was working to someone so closely to him, maybe, I don't know, that might have saved me at that moment, but it was horrific.
You're 16, 17. How are you feeling? You're in this big fancy apartment on your own, presumably at night, and your boss walks through the door and that happens. Like, just talk me through what's going on in your head.
Thinking about it now, it just seems like such a horror story. Like, it's giving me the shakes, because it just put me in this horrible position. Obviously, I loved my job because that's exactly what I wanted to, you know, to do. That was my dream. And you know, he's doing all these things to me, and I was close to people that he knew, and I felt like I couldn't even tell them either, because I didn't want to bring embarrassment and shame. I haven't actually, I'm going to probably get emotional because I'm talking about my mum, but I haven't even told my mum exactly what went down. So yeah, it's quite tough. It's hard to talk to her because she's so close to me. I've obviously sitting here talking to you, it makes it a little bit different. It makes it, like, if I speak to my mum, it makes it a bit more real.
But your mum had a bit of mother's intuition that things weren't right. Mm-hmm. And she actually went to see Mohammed Al Fayed.
Yeah, because I told her that he was offering to buy me an apartment, and she was just like, obviously red flags were going off, and she went to actually speak to him, was just like, what's going on here? You know, and I think someone actually in Harrods said to her, don't let her accept the apartment. And obviously, she didn't know this was going on. I hid it from her. I didn't want to upset her. I was so ashamed and embarrassed and just mortified with what was going on. I was just trying to pretend it wasn't really happening to me, if I'm honest.
Did you confide in anyone at that time? Because, as you said, you worked with somebody extremely close to Mohammed Al Fayed, so you couldn't talk to them. But you did work with others at Harrods. Did you get a sense that you might not have been the only one?
Honestly, I don't think I'd thought that at the time. I just was trying to deal with what I was dealing with, what was going on, because it was just so horrific. And I just didn't want to lose my job at that point. And he told me if I would say anything that I would lose my job. So I just really, got scared. And at 16, turning 17, I just, you think you know what's going on at the time, but you really don't. Like, I look back now and just feel very sorry for my 16-year-old self and wish I could protect her.
And at such a young age as well, and you touched on it before, he thought you were vulnerable because of your parents having separated, not being together anymore. The perception of your father in the tabloids at the time, he saw you now think as somebody vulnerable, somebody that he could target, and that is something we hear a lot about when it comes to grooming and sexual assault of young girls. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Becoming a mum, I just thought I need to speak out, because I do not want my daughter to grow up in a world where women are silenced and feel that they don't have a voice when we do, and things shouldn't be happening. And I just hope me coming out and speaking will give other women the voice as well, so that it doesn't make these predators think that they can get away with it, because it is spoken about now and it will be spoken about. And hopefully, if that just puts the seed of thought into these predators' minds, that they might get caught out and they're going to get spoken about. They're not going to proceed to do these horrible crimes, basically.
And did you take courage from the other women that have come forward? Have you been following this for the last few weeks?
I have.
Months?
It's something, like I said, I put to bed many moons ago, 22 years ago. And obviously hearing their stories, I thought, no, I was just so proud of them. And I thought, no, this is exactly what I should be doing.
Was the worst of it what happened at that apartment? What happened after that incident? Because, as you said, you then got on a plane, shaken, upset, not quite sure of what was going on. Off to Milan, you go to do your job, and you come back. What happens then?
I think I drunk a lot at that point, because I was trying to silence my brain and my mind, and I just kind of reached to alcohol as a survival mode at that point, which really upsets me now, because I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol throughout my life, and I do think that maybe that could have stemmed it.
Is that when it started, do you think, around that time?
Yeah, because I was just numbing what was going on. Because, like I said, I was in my dream job. I was getting sexually assaulted, by my boss, which I felt very scared to even be able to come out and talk about, very embarrassed, ashamed, dirty. I just wanted it to go away. So the alcohol was like numbing that in my mind. And I feel like, because I obviously trusted him at the start, because he knew my parents, I've dealt with him, I've crossed paths with him before, my trust in people obviously went, skyrocketing to the floor, which I already found it hard to trust people anyway, growing up, in the limelight. So that was even that was a big lesson that I learned.
How consistent was this abuse? How regular was it that you were put in harm's way?
It was very regular, because I had to take reports up to his probably every week, kind of. So it was just obviously slowly but quickly ended up,
And it would always happen?
always, yes, if it was something, whether it was a grope, whether it was, you know, the hug that lent into him trying to put his tongue down my throat all the time. And it's just, it's mad now, because I'd be like, if it happened to me now, I'd like to think that I'd be like, give him a punch or something like that. But when I was just so scared and so didn't really know what was going on.
You're a child.
And, you know, he's a very powerful man. You know, I was 16, I'm going into his store. I managed to work my way up to have the dream job. I'm scared about losing it, and he's just putting me in these positions. It was just, I just felt so dirty after coming out of the office. It was just horrible.
Part of you must have thought you'd be safe because of who your parents were, and I think that's what people may find shocking about this interview, is that your mum and dad were really famous, and Mohammed Al Fayed felt emboldened enough, because we understand that this was happening to other women, probably at the same time you were there.
Many women.
That, you know, you weren't protected. There was no protection for you because of your parents' celebrity status. You were as much a target as everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, I suppose, if people watch it, they can think, if it's happened to me, how many other women that haven't come forward? So hopefully me doing this can, you know, give the strength to any other women that have been through the same thing.
Yeah. What does justice look like to you? Because he is dead. And having spoken to women that were abused by him, it's very hard to know what justice looks like, but they feel like you, they have to tell their story to embolden other women to share the experience, for people to know what he was really like. So what does justice look like for you, Bianca?
Well, like you said, he's not around, but you want him to be made accountable for the things that he's done. I just, you know, want the women to find peace in what's happened and just come together to know that you're not alone, that this happens to many women. And I just want women to have their own voice and just come out and just be able to talk their own truth. And if it's something that, you know, I know this has affected a lot of people in many ways. So just for women that have been through it to heal, basically, because the justice isn't really going to be justice, because, like, you know, he can't be made accountable for it because it's not here.
And finally, Bianca, this is the first time you've spoken about this. Thank you for trusting us with your story. And I know that when you leave this room, you're now going to have those difficult conversations with your mum and your dad, your granddad, your brothers. What's going through your head right now? Because that is not going to be easy. This, you and I, you know, is the easy bit almost. Yeah,
it makes it very much real, being able to just, you know, speak to my mum about it. I'm sure I'm going to cry again. There's going to be a lot of tears, because it was just so horrible. So it's just, I feel ashamed, obviously, telling, like, my granddad and my brothers, because obviously it's just hard.
Don't be ashamed. It's not a shame, Bianca.
I just don't want to upset them. But, like, obviously coming here and speaking to you I feel like I have to do this. Like, and I want to do this, and I want to stand for the women, and, you know, and just hopefully make any kind of change that in the future that my daughter wouldn't have to go through something like this, and it would be spoken about, and these predators wouldn't be able to get away with what they're getting away with, you know, in the past.